Listen, we're starting off the show with a lie. Cleveland does not look like this right now in November, okay? We got bad weather for a backyard brawl between the big bad Steelers and the just bad Browns. And will that bad weather keep Jameis Winston and company in this game? And can Russell Wilson and company score enough points? Apparently, they don't even need touchdowns to win. It'll all make sense. We'll talk about the spread, the money line, all that stuff, and snow on the pregame power-up. Let's go! And with that, we welcome you into the Week 12 edition of the Pregame Power-Up presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Bellafato as we get set to break down everything you need to know for the Steelers taking on the Browns. Look, even if the weather is not great where you are, you can still find a way to have a positive day, and we're going to help you get into that mode right now. Emerson Lazio will join us to talk about a tale of two contracts with two quarterbacks on different teams. Marshall Newhouse, the big man from DFW, will also join us to talk about everything in this game and everything else going around the NFL. But, Claudia, we got a Pittsburgh Steelers team on a path to lock down this division again, taking on a Browns team, polar opposite records. Cleveland is 2-8. Yeah. And the Steelers are 8-2.
Very different stories. And I think the one thing going to the Browns' advantage is the fact that there could be flurries tonight. There could be snow on top of
It's Cleveland.
It's going to be a mess. Would you stop? There might be people watching from Cleveland.
They're very aware. They are very aware of what it's like in Cleveland this time of year.
Well, this line opened, and 3 days ago, actually, was at Steelers as the 5-point favorite. And this has moved to 3.5, where we're seeing it now. Heavy bets on the Steelers, and I think a lot of that has to do too with the fact that public, as we like to call it, that's what the bets are versus the public and the sharp money. Some people just don't look at the weather. Maybe they'll see it right before game time, but maybe they were hammering the Steelers saying there's no way they don't cover 5. I'm getting under a touchdown. But the money has moved this line accordingly because it could be a tough game to put up points.
Absolutely, and the Steelers just find ways to keep on rolling. They're back in it, and it does help them, I think, playing on a short week that they're playing a divisional opponent. Yeah. They put the Ravens to bed as a 3.5-point underdog last week thanks to Chris Boswell's field goals, all 5 of them, or 6 of them rather. They've won 5 straight games for the first time since starting 11-0 in the COVID season of 2020. It was the Steelers' second win of 2024 with no touchdowns and 6 field goals. They joined the 1993 Chargers as the only teams in NFL history to do that. Then San Diego went 8-8 that season. By the way, the Steelers are actually 2-0 this season when not scoring a touchdown. The rest of the NFL in those games is 2-19. So it makes absolutely no sense. But the Steelers are now 8-2 and can guarantee their 21st consecutive non-losing season with a win over the Browns tonight. That would tie the NFL record set by the Dallas Cowboys from 1965 to 1985. And Mike Tomlin himself has 17 straight non-losing seasons, which is an NFL record for a head coach in his career. No one else in the history of the NFL can make that claim. Now, Tomlin made a very bold move in Week 7 by benching quarterback Justin Fields in favor of Russell Wilson. Wilson has started the Steelers' last 4 wins, and given their offense a little jolt, the team has averaged just over 27 points per game with Wilson compared to about 20 with Fields. The one place Wilson has struggled is where you don't want your quarterback to struggle, the red zone, inside the 20. The Steelers went 0 for 4 in the red area last week against Baltimore, which included an end zone interception from Wilson. But to be fair, he threw it up to his tight end who didn't jump. But here's the bigger issue. For the season, Wilson's QBR in the red zone, which is a scale of 1 to 100, is 8. 8 out of 100. In their last 3 games, they've come away with just 3 touchdowns on 12 red zone possessions. Overall, the team ranks 30th in red zone touchdown percentage, something that Mike Tomlin says, hey, the other guys are getting paid too.
Sometimes, man, I just like to give credit to those that we compete against as opposed to crying and whining about our lack of performance in certain areas. Make no mistake, we got room for growth in a lot of areas, but they played well also.
I think the best thing that we can do, though, is focus on just trying to be, great in the fundamentals, great in the little details, and in every time you step in the red zone, looking forward to scoring touchdowns. I think that's a mentality thing. I think that we've done that so far some this year. We want to do more of it, obviously, and we've got to have a great week of practice this week, obviously in the short week, and be able to do it hopefully this week.
Well, regardless of the recent scoring struggles, the team has defied expectations of the sportsbook from the beginning of the season. Their win total opened 8.5. It's now 11.5. They are plus 185 to make the playoffs and are now almost a lock. Favorites in the division at minus 225. And Mike Tomlin has now taken over the top spot in the odds to win Coach of the Year, jumping in front of both Dan Campbell in Detroit, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and Jim Harbaugh in LA. But Claudia, Mother Nature may be trying to help Cleveland stay in this game tonight.
It's everybody versus Mike Tomlin. Now the weather is getting a part of it. You mentioned it, 30s. We're seeing flurries. The total, which I didn't mention off the top, opened at 41, down to 36.5 for good reason. Got to 36 even, a little bit of buyback. But these lines are moving for very good reason, I should say. Now all of this might help the Browns. A few other trends are going their way. Underdogs in AFC North games, 48 and 31 ATS. They're covering at a 61% rate since 2018, 26 and 16 ATS since 2021. That is the best of any division. And how about this? The Steelers have never won a road divisional game on Thursday Night Football. They are 0-7 straight up and 1-6 against the spread. So some good news for you Cleveland fans out there. Now last week, Cleveland suffered their 8th loss of the season to the Saints. They did, however, put up a season high 443 total yards. It was the most total yards by a team with 14 or less points since the Bucs in Week 10 of 2018. In that game, Ryan Fitzpatrick got benched for Jameis Winston. So at 2-8, it seems to be another lost season for the Browns, but they can still get up for a divisional matchup with an arch rival, and they're excited to try and play spoiler.
Well, it's going to be cold as hell. Well, that'll be a little bit different, but I mean, it's probably as physical and gritty football game as you're really going to see around the league. It's two teams that really don't have that much love for one another, and play a physical brand of ball, and they're looking forward to trying to take the #1 spot in the AFC, and we're fighting for tooth and nail for each and every win we get. So that's just a classic case of the immovable object meets the unstoppable force.
Growing up, seeing the blood, sweat, and tears that happen in these games, like these games are a hard-nosed, hard-fought, true definition, cold weather football game. Football weather, football game, like this is the premiere. When you're growing up watching NFL films, hearing that amazing voice come on when you see the Steelers, and then he always talk about the Raiders, but the Steelers are in the Browns division, so this is a big game, and we got to get this for our fans.
I'm putting money on it now. Jameis Winston will make more money as a motivational speaker than he did as a football player.
I would buy a used car from him. No question.
Me too. One of the Browns' 2 wins. Would you move to Cleveland?
No.
Okay. One of the Browns' 2 wins this season came over the Ravens back in Week 8, so they'll be trying to hand Pittsburgh an L and tighten up the top of this division even more. Pittsburgh is in the midst of a 4 straight games against the AFC North. They played Baltimore last week, Cleveland tonight, then Cincy, then Cleveland again. And the rest of the way, Trey, all you got is the Eagles and the Chiefs outside of that.
Well,
so
yeah, it's crazy. The last 4 games for the Steelers may determine their entire season, because they're one of 3 teams in the NFL right now that control their destiny, which is if you win out, you get the #1 seed.
Yeah.
It's the Steelers, the Chiefs, because the Chiefs and Steelers play on Christmas Day, and the Lions in the NFC. The Steelers' last 4 games of the year, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, and Bengals.
Yeah. So outside of the division, those are the 2 worst teams.
They better finish strong. For more on the Steelers and what's going on and how they've done it again, let's bring in the Camp Bowie Colossus. Played his college ball at TCU, spent 11 seasons in the NFL, Marshall Newhouse. Marshall, if the Steelers win tonight, it would be the 18th straight non-losing season for Mike Tomlin. No coach in the history of the NFL can make that claim. Is he finally getting the recognition he deserves?
Well, it's not finally. I mean, he's been a guy that we've known has been just the top of the top, even after the Super Bowl. It's been a while now. It's been a while since the teams of Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. But yes, he's continuing to win at this clip is just impressive. I mean, we were just talking weeks ago about is he overrated? And I'm like, no, that just can't be true. You don't win in a league that's this hard to win this consistently without being at the top of your game. Now, some of these seasons he's been doing a lot more with less. I think this is one of those seasons. Other seasons he seemed to have the horse in the stable, as you may say. But yeah, he's absolutely getting his deserved due. But it hasn't like people haven't known how good this guy is.
Unfortunately, a lot of fans just look at a record and say they must be good. He must be a good head coach, and they have that 8-2 record to back up what we already knew about Mike Tomlin. Let's go to the other side of this with Kevin Stefanski. Not the same situation. They have that record flipped, of course, a massive situation, terrible deal that they did with their quarterback in Deshaun Watson, which we will dig into.
Yes, we will.
I'm curious, though, when it comes to this season, stepping back, how much do you put the blame on head coach?
I think he gets a fair amount of blame. Now, obviously, what we're finding out as the weeks go on is there are a lot of decisions and power being made above his head, really without his say-so or against his will. And so there's levels to that, not being able to blame this all the way on him. But the things that are in his control, he was brought in to be an offensive descendant from that Shanahan tree. And we haven't seen as much of that explosive offense with Deshaun Watson and even without Deshaun Watson. I think the numbers have been better with Jameis. But again, it's not good enough winning football. And so he deserves plenty of blame because guess what? As the head coach, you're also responsible for the defense. This defense is struggling. You're responsible for the special teams. You're responsible for guys' morale and how hard they play. And so all that goes into the head coaching job. And I do believe this many losing seasons normally in Cleveland get you ousted. We've seen Hugh Jackson's, we've seen the Alex Van Pelt's. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys come and go as coordinators and head coaches, even in interim, who don't last that long in Cleveland the way they're playing right now.
Yeah, not for long is the adage of the NFL. Kevin Stefanski was actually the coach of the year a year ago, and now people are calling for him to be fired. It's crazy. But you mentioned that defense. They were the #1 statistical defense last year in terms of yards per game. It has not turned out that way at all. Myles Garrett is still playing at a high level. What went wrong with this defense, Marshall?
I think they just aren't a good tackling defense, and I'm not sure what you chalk that up to. They're getting pressure at one of the highest clips in the league, but they're also giving up an incredible amount of explosive plays. So with the amount of man coverage they play on the back end, the only thing I can say is they aren't tackling well. When people put the ball in the receiver's hands, the runner should go down. They're getting a lot of yak, a lot of shots over their head, and I don't know how you explain that as a defense that has in years past been really, really good, one of the top defenses, and having a player as dynamic and as explosive as Myles Garrett, you should be doing a lot better than you are. And so, yeah, having a high pressure rate and then also not tackling on the back end to me is an effort thing. There's not much more than that. When you don't have a low tackle rate, that's an effort thing.
Let's move to the O-line, something you know a thing or two about. Interesting situation with left tackle Jedrick Wills for the Browns. Didn't play last week. He said it was a business decision. Stefanski came out and said that was a poor choice of words. Now he's not playing in this game. He said, I don't really care about the poor choice of words situation. What do you think of this just as a player looking at this type of situation? And how do you think they're going to do against this front seven tonight?
Man, that locker room must be tense. I would not want to be there right now when you're starting left tackle and the head coach are having, spats with communication and what that even looks like. It's tough when guys are injured. They want to play. Coaches want them out there. But when you get guys dealing with like this stuff out in the open, that to me smells trouble, as I alluded to. Yeah, he won the Coach of the Year last year, but things can fall apart quickly. But ultimately, they've gotten Jack Conklin back. He's a really a stud right tackle. That's helped a lot. But with TJ Watt, I mean, you've got to just lock arms and play red over and just by committee, take care of that guy. He is just that good. He's that dynamic. And if you don't do that, your offense doesn't even get started. He makes a lot of plays explosively with just regular pass rush moves, but he is relentless. He's a guy with a high motor as well. He makes a lot of sacks or his pressures on play actions where he just doesn't give up. And he just wins on second, 5, 6, and 7 of a drop back passing situation. So he's a guy you have to have multiple eyes on at all times.
Marshall, thanks. We'll check back with you a little bit later on the show to talk about another team that may be having some issues in terms of what's going on with business decisions. Lots more to come. Two of the best in the business will be getting after the quarterback tonight, but last season one of them took to hardware and the other one took to social media to complain about it. We'll talk about the drama between Myles and TJ, and the pregame PowerUp continues. Pregame PowerUp is presented by Campbell's Chunky. soup that eats like a meal.
The AP Defensive Player of the Year,
Go, girl.
presented by TCL, is Myles Garrett.
All right, we continue here in the pregame power presented by Campbell's Chunky. It is soup that eats like a meal. That was Myles Garrett at last year's NFL Honors before the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, picking up the Defensive Player of the Year award. Really, really good. If you look at the numbers for Myles Garrett last year, he finished in the top 10 in sacks, quarterback hits, tackles for loss, quarterback pressures, and forced fumbles. But a lot of people thought that T.J. Watt had a better season. T.J. Watt was one of them. After the awards, look at the date, nothing I'm not used to. In other words, saying, I should have gotten the award. Well, he was a little upset about that, and then Myles was a little upset about this. Garrett told reporters on Tuesday that Watt should apologize to him the next time he sees him. So look for that when they're on the field, not playing against each other, but tonight at some point when the Steelers visit Cleveland to take on the Brownies. And you take a look at everything else here. Watt finished, I mean, it's hard not to argue. He finished with better statistics to Garrett in almost every defensive category. He had more sacks, 16-14, tackles, 68-42, passes defended, 8-3, and fumble recoveries, 3-1. While they had the same number of forced fumbles, Garrett had better pressure and pass rush win rates, and the Browns led the NFL in total defense. So obviously, this was something they were going to get asked about before the first meeting of the season. Here's what both sides had to say.
I've never complained about the trophy not being in my house, and vice versa. He shouldn't be feeling two ways about it going to me. So we're just gonna play the game. I don't play against TJ. He doesn't play against me, but we'll have a plan to go out and do what we're supposed to, win the game, and dominate on defense. But it's up for grabs this year, and we'll see the best man win.
I have respect for everybody in the league. Obviously, a guy who's been a top passer in the league for a long time, but I don't compete directly against him. It's our team versus their team, and at the end of the day, I just want the Pittsburgh Steelers to come out with a win.
Yeah, but you did put up the tweet. I mean, let's not pretend like that didn't happen. By the way, Watt has won the award back in 2021, and once again, it looks to be maybe his year, minus 200 favorite. Garrett's odd to win last season closed at minus 190 before taking home the hardware, but this season he's all the way down to plus 6,500. Garrett and Watt are one of 6 players this season with at least 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and 15 quarterback hits, Claudia.
Let's do a deeper dive with Next Gen Stats looking at this matchup. So as we know, TJ Watt pretty good. How about his teammate though, Joey Porter Jr.? You might remember these stats from last week. Most targets without allowing a touchdown. We talked about Mitchell last week. Now Joey Porter Jr. in their second, only behind Devin Witherspoon. Now where are we seeing him the most? He shadowed receivers on over 65% of their wide aligned routes. In 8 games this season, that's tied for the second most in the NFL. Now we're not seeing him travel with slot receivers, only 28 snaps as a slot corner all season. So what does this mean for the Browns offense? Well, could be a long night for Jerry Jeudy, who is aligned out wide on a team high 381 offensive snaps this season. That's over 65% of a snap share. Now he has caught 30 of his 55 targets, 470 plus yards, 2 touchdowns from an out wide alignment, good for 13th most on such alignments in the NFL, but he could struggle tonight, which means Jameis Winston likely to look to the slot receiver, Elijah Moore, who has benefited with Jameis Winston under center. 8 targets in all 3 games with him. He has the most routes, targets, catches, and receiving yards out of the slot this season for the Browns. So to recap, we could be seeing a lot of pressure from TJ Watt tonight. Jameis Winston could be struggling to his #1 wide receiver with Joey Porter Jr. on lockdown out wide, which means it could be a big game for Elijah Moore.
Claudia, thanks. Another guy who has benefited from Jameis Winston under center, and really since Amari Cooper being dealt, is Cedric Tillman. Tillman leads the team with 40 targets and 3 receiving touchdowns since Amari went to Buffalo. Before that, he had 5 targets and 3 receptions in 6 games. So yeah, he was happy with that. Tillman's props tonight set at 3.5 receptions and 43.5 receiving yards, and is plus 300 rather, to score a touchdown. Now, it's going to be an emotional game for running back Nick Chubb, who faces the Steelers for the first time since suffering that awful knee injury in Pittsburgh 14 months ago. Chubb had 50 yards last week against the Saints, the most in his 4 games since returning from injury. Things don't get any easier, though, as they go up against a top 5 rush defense tonight in the Steelers. Now, the run game on both sides of the ball has been a problem for the Browns, especially after their last 3 games. They're getting outrushed by almost 70 yards per game. Opponents are almost doubling their yards per carry, and they've given up 6 touchdowns on the ground while scoring 0 themselves. That's a 0. Browns gave up 138 yards and 3 touchdowns to Taysom Hill alone last week in their loss to New Orleans.
Well, that bodes well for Najee Harris tonight, the main man out of the backfield for the Steelers, leading the team with 708 rush yards, 890 scrimmage yards this season. The Steelers 26-6-1 when Harris gets at least 16 plus carries. His attempts drop tonight set at 17 in the hook, so he needs 18 or more, and his rush yards set at 73.5. That is tied for the highest total of his career. That being said, Jaylen Warren has cut into his workload a bit. He's averaging just over 70 scrimmage yards per game over the last 4 games, as opposed to just 25 per game in his first 4. The Steelers 8-0 when Warren plays in 2024, 0-2 in the games he missed with a knee. Both averaging 4 yards a carry. Najee a few more explosive plays, so you see the edge there. But we have been seeing a little bit of a 50-50 split with them.
Yeah, look, they're more effective when you can sort of play them off each other this way and give yourself sort of 2 things to worry about. Here's another reason to love Mike Tomlin, though, people just don't understand how consistent he is. He took over the team in 2007. Since 2007, the Steelers, from week 12 on in the regular season, have won 76% of their games. That is by far the highest for any team over that total. Second on that list are the San Francisco 49ers at about 69%. So he's making a huge difference. Betting split's also important tonight.
I was going to say, which is why it's always scary. It's like Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Mike Tomlin. You don't want to bet against them. 80% of the bets on the Steelers to cover. The handle a little bit shorter, 67%. It goes even lower when it comes to the over, and that makes sense, of course, because of the weather, and that total has moved, so keep that in mind. 9% of the bets on the Steelers' money line, 87% of the handle, and the handle on Wilson's under passing touchdowns. Of course, that has to do with the weather as well. We could probably see some rushing touchdowns for them. For more on the liability the book has tonight, let's hear from our anonymous sportsbook informant, known only as Captain Book.
First and foremost, it's Thursday night, a quick turnaround, division game. As a book, we went up on Sunday night with Pittsburgh as a 4.5-point favorite. We did take some respected action on the Browns. That, combined with reports of rain, wind, things of that nature, did move this line down a full point. Pittsburgh is only 9-10 all-time on Thursday night under Mike Tomlin, but the public does believe that record will be back to 500 after this game, and so they are hammering the money line and the spread for the Steelers. Cleveland does have weapons, namely Big Mr. Chubb, but this is an AFC North game, and while there are strategic decisions and questions to be asked and answered, you can pretty much throw out the records, buckle up your chin strap, and watch them dogs hunt. How do you get 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag? I think we're about to find out.
All right, we're told that was Captain Book trying to be Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until our producer told us.
There was no sensory awareness
Captain
of that
Book.
in any way, shape, or form. It was almost as bad as his Texas accent.
Good try, though. Oh, no, I thought the Texas was a lot better. That was pretty rough.
You've never been to Texas. That is not good.
Actually haven't.
Not good. All right, so for more on this game, let's break down and bring in from the DraftKings trading floor in Vegas, former NFL wide receiver and current VSiN analyst Mike Pritchard. Mike, let's talk about the Steelers first and foremost. I mean, that defense has been remarkable. They made Lamar look human in that win over the Ravens. Derrick Henry fumbled the first time he touched the ball. What is it about playing the Steelers defense that makes it so difficult?
You know, Trey, they have a blueprint that's been tried and true since 1969 when Chuck Noll got there, right? I mean, they know what the personnel is all about. They know what they want to run in terms of scheme. They even know what they need to do with the players on the field. So it's plug and play. I mean, it's T.J. Watt, it's Kevin Green, it's Harrison, it's Mean Joe Green, it's Elsie Greenwood. It's a plug and play defense that's been tried and true for decades, and they don't deviate off of that. They look for specific players, even on the back end, whether it's Carnell Lake, Woodson, Palomalu. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a plug-and-play system, and they make it work, and they've made it work for a long time.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite stats ever since 1970, Steelers coaches 3, Popes 5.
It's a tough defense against the pass and the run. I want to talk about the passing game because both quarterbacks like to throw the deep ball. Actually, second and third right now in passer rating, 20-plus air yards outside of Justin Herbert. He's in at number 1. We talked about these defenses, but weather could be the biggest defense of them all and make that deep ball a bit tough. I'm really curious from a player's perspective. Of course, you guys hear about the weather. How much does the game plan really change, and how much is that talked about heading into a game like this?
Well, you try not to let the weather affect you because, you have to be mentally tough, right, Claudia? And I think out there, if you let the elements kind of get to you, then all of a sudden you're distracted. As players, as wide receivers, we can work with the wet ball in practice. They'll dunk it in water, and we'll play with that. And certainly to tack on the gloves, I mean, it's all off Fred Blitkoff and Lester Hayes days when they had to stick them now with those gloves, right? But it's the swirling winds that I think makes it difficult to try to track the ball, the deep ball in particular, like you mentioned. Russell Wilson, he likes those moon balls too, so he's going to have to change that. He's going to have to drive the ball in this wind, the swirling winds. That stadium's right on the weather, right on the water right there, and so you'll get those swirling winds along with the elements. So it'll be difficult, but if the guys can focus in on the nose of the ball, they should be able to catch it tonight.
All right, so let's talk about the guys catching it from Jameis Winston for the Cleveland Browns. He's only playing because Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles, but he has had more success with his receiving core than Deshaun has. What do you attribute that to, Mike?
Well, Trey, I think Jameis, he's a pocket passer because he can't move. He can't run, right? So he has to stay in the pocket, and he's disciplined that way. And he's savvy about where he wants to go with the football. Now, he throws a lot of interceptions and makes a lot of mistakes, and that's kind of held him back from being a starter or a premier starter in the league. Whereas Deshaun Watson, he liked to improvise so much. And he would often break down the play before he needed to, just to try to improvise and make something happen, where I think Jameis is more disciplined. So either the quick reads, the quick game, that's going to be there for Jameis. And certainly, as the routes develop against coverages, he's going to hang in that pocket as long as the offensive line can allow him to do that, to deliver the football.
And we're seeing a tight spread. I don't know if it's so much respect for Jameis Winston. Again, I think it has to do with the weather. This line moving from 5 down to 3.5. You love your dogs. We're getting over a field goal in tough weather. What are we thinking? The public likes the Steelers. What does Mike Pritchard like tonight?
I mean, Claudia, I'm conflicted again because I want to be on Cleveland here, but I've made so much money with the Steelers this year, to be honest with you. Going against the grain because everybody thought that schedule was going to do the Steelers in, and you've already talked about it. You and Trey have already talked about Tomlin and his consistency. He'll have these guys ready to play. They run the ball really, really well. Just watched last week, Taysom Hill. And then last week, too, the Steelers unveiled that Justin Fields option offense as well. So now you have 2 quarterbacks and 6 eligibles to run the football at Cleveland. I think that's a lot of offense for Cleveland to prepare for and get ready for with a team that does not have the willingness to be physical and tackle as well. So I like the Steelers laying the hook. I'm in Sin City. Committing a sin, laying 3.5 here with the Steelers.
Well, listen, we need to work on Justin Fields going one more step before beginning that slide. That might have won the game for him right there. All right, so you talk about the number. What about the total here? Totals of 37 or less are 35-15-1 to the under since 2020.
Yeah, I've looked at the trends on totals because I'm horrendous when it comes to betting totals, to be honest with you. But, it's 50-50, right? It's really at 50-50 in terms of what the trends suggest all year long. So I'll go with the under. I mean, I think the elements that Claudia mentioned, the elements will be at play. I think the Steelers will be content trying to run the football at Cleveland, and we'll see what kind of offense Cleveland can come up with all those injuries and certainly the inconsistency they've had on offense all year.
It's so festive, our first flurry game. Very excited. Mike Pritchard out there in Vegas. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. There's been a ton of money dished out to QBs over the last few seasons, and the return on investment, well, it's been underwhelming to say the least. We'll take a look at Watson's albatross of a contract and Russell's reboot. That's next on the Pregame PowerUp.
Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal.
watch football movies, you hear about like, you know, falling in mud, having a big grass stain coming up in your face mask. Like this is exciting football, and this is what we do. It's November football, it's football weather, and you playing against one of the top historic franchises with a Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame players, and the Cleveland Browns 2-8. We got to show up and show out.
Give us more, Jameis Winston. Welcome back to the pregame power-up presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. Jameis Winston excited for this one tonight. Both he and Wilson took over as their team's starting quarterbacks mid-season and have improved the offensive output. They have better winning percentages, more passing yards, and higher passing ratings than their predecessors. Winston threw for nearly 400 yards and 2 touchdowns in their loss to the Saints last week, and he's now eclipsed 200 passing yards in all 3 of his starts and has 40 or more attempts in each. Here's a tell of the tape here. Winston versus Watson this season. Winston has had more yards per attempt, more touchdowns, and a higher passer rating. And one thing to note, he's been pressured and sacked at a much lower rate than Watson. Who knows what the future holds for the Browns' $270 million man, but he may have thrown his last pass in Cleveland. Bad quarterback contracts are becoming a trend over the last few years in the NFL. For more on that, here's the one and only Emerson Lazio.
This is Deshaun Watson. No relation to Emma Watson, as far as we can ascertain. However, his contract with the Browns goes toe-to-toe with the budget of one of her Harry Potter films. The average movie in the franchise cost $145 million to make. It has generated nearly $7 billion spellbounding dollars in profit. Meanwhile, the Cleveland quarterback's contract is looking a little haggard. $230 million over 5 seasons, and thus far has generated a 9-10 record with 22 total touchdowns. And while Hermione, Harry, and Jolly Ginger Ron will be back in our lives soon thanks to an HBO reboot, Deshaun here may be stuck in the doghouse forever. The Browns did a very Browns thing by raw dogging their deal with Watson, giving him the most guaranteed cash in NFL history, surrendering multiple first-round picks for a guy with substantial off-field issues.
It's just remarkable how little return on investment the Browns have gotten for that contract.
You gave that richly, fully guaranteed contract to a quarterback that has in no way delivered, has statistically been one of the worst in the NFL over the span that he's been there.
The Browns have set themselves back years by handing out the worst contract in NFL history, and it's just one of the many head-scratching quarterback deals lacking that magic touch. The G-men finally admitted to their giant mistake this week, benching Danny Dimes in favor of everyone's favorite passing paisan.
Felt like this was a decision that we needed to make here and try to spark things, and we went and did it with Tommy.
His contract is costing New York $1.6 billion, or $160 million, or just north of $50 million per win, which is just 3 since he signed the deal. In Pittsburgh, one man's trash is another man's treasure. After being sent to Denver in one of the biggest blockbuster trades this century, Russell Wilson put pen to paper, securing $242 million baffling bucks over 5 seasons.
Broncos country, let's ride.
After a rough ride for Russ, he received a reboot in the Steel City, leaving the Broncos holding the burly bag. Wilson is making $39 million this season, with Pittsburgh on the hook for just north of $1 million. The Mile High Maniacs will be feeling the dead cap effect of that contract for the next 2 seasons. But back to tonight's game and what will come of that agreement between Cleveland and Watson. For now, that deal is looking positively putrid.
I'm sure the Browns are taking as much time as they possibly can to try to figure out what all their options are here. I have a tough time picturing him playing for the Browns next year.
I think it ultimately ends with the Browns have to draft a quarterback in this upcoming NFL draft. And even if Deshaun's on the roster, you cannot trot him out there as your starting quarterback. That cannot be the plan for you going forward.
Take a look at the quarterbacks with the most guaranteed money in the league and see how they've performed. The top 4 haven't only combined 10 wins this season, Trey.
Yikes.
3 of them aren't even starting right now. Now, Watson is certainly the worst, but the deals that Dak and Lawrence got in the offseason, those aren't looking very good either.
No, it's not. And just so people understand the magnitude of this contract for the Cleveland Browns, and you heard Ross Tucker and Gojo basically say they can't play him next year. Their cap hit over the next 2 seasons for that contract, nothing you can do, there's no way to mitigate it, $73 million. Deshaun Watson's going to count against their cap in 2025 and 2026, whether he's playing, whether he's doing anything at all, in any way, shape, or form. It's $73 million that they have to apply to their cap. It is a dumpster fire. Hey, speaking of dumpster fires, the Jets continue. They fired their general manager this week, Joe Douglas. So basically everybody except 2 people that have put the Aaron Rodgers deal together are gone. And those 2 people are Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers. At 3-8, the Jets have been arguably the biggest disappointment in the NFL. They fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. And, this is all with Woody Johnson saying this is the best roster he's had in 25 years of ownership. That's not true in any way, shape, or form. The team under Joe went 30-64 in 5+ years. The only teams with worse records over that time frame, the Carolina Panthers. The Jets will now be looking for the next man to lead the latest rebuild of a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs since the 2010 season, or put another way, the longest playoff drought of every one of the 4 major professional sports in this country. MLB, NBA, NHL, and NFL. And the man who should shoulder a lot of the blame is still under center for that team. However, he may not have been. And Woody Johnson got in his own way. According to a report by The Athletic this week, Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, wanted to bench Rodgers back in September after the team lost to the Broncos and fell to 2-2. Some in the meeting thought, you've got to be kidding. Others thought Johnson was completely serious. Rodgers survived that meeting, but likely won't be back in New York next year. A once promising season since before they played has turned sour for Rodgers, and you can really see the drop-off at the Comeback Player of the Year awards. Rodgers was the favorite to start the season. Before that Broncos game, he was in money. By week 8, he was plus 650. He's plummeted all the way to plus 5,000. Kirk Cousins is currently the favorite at 150. So we have some teams that have just really mismanaged this situation when it comes to the quarterback. And to be somewhat fair to the Jets, I don't think anybody thought the fall was going to be this precipitous for Aaron Rodgers.
Correct.
But it has been very bad.
Because they had 7 wins. They all said, right, they were quarterback away from it. They had a top 5 defense. They have the weapons in the passing game and the ground game. They were an Aaron Rodgers away, but an Aaron Rodgers 10 years ago.
They were an Aaron Rodgers of 2015 away, not an Aaron Rodgers of 2024 away. All right, for more on this, let's bring in a man who knows a thing or two about Aaron Rodgers. You can see the poster of the cover of the magazine, ESPN the magazine right behind him when he played with Aaron Rodgers. Look, Joe Douglas is out. There it is.
That one.
Woody Johnson said this was the best team he's ever had in 25 years. That can't be true because this team is terrible. How much of this is on Aaron? How much of this is on the organization?
Listen, it's as much as Aaron has made himself a target for all the blame. This is top down. This is Woody Johnson. And ultimately, that's his right. This is his toy. This team and billionaires alike, they use these teams as their toys. And what do you get? Sometimes you break your toy. Sometimes you buy a toy that might have been secondhand that you thought would have been really fun, and all of a sudden it doesn't work good anymore. So Aaron Rodgers, when they brought him in, as you guys alluded to, they thought they were quarterback away. They thought if we can get just an average Aaron Rodgers performance, it'll put us over the top. But then you come in when you're only 2-2 and you try to bench him. Like, that kind of meddling is your right as the owner, but is also the reason why nothing else functions from top down. Joe Douglas, for all the flack he's getting deservedly right now, has drafted pretty well. They have talent on this team, maybe the talent that's not coalescing in the right way, but then that's what you do. You hire coaches. Well, if you decide that I'm going to appease Aaron and hire Nathaniel Hackett and then fires Robert Saleh because he opposes me, like, all of this screams an owner who has no clue how to win. And that's, again, his right, but ultimately the blame falls on him. And what are you supposed to do if you're Aaron Rodgers other than retreat into the woods? I hope this isn't the end for him, but that seems like that's ending this way.
Yeah, just to really quickly back up your point, the Jets just they didn't even let them. They just tried to take a 22% increase for season tickets in 2025. 22% increase after what we've seen this season. That's what's happening with Woody Johnson.
Listen, from a fan's perspective, I have a lot of friends who are Jets fans. I'm a Patriots fan, so it's disappointing to watch our season, but we have something to look forward to in a young quarterback in Drake May. A lot of pieces around him that are young and unproven, but again, with bright futures, going back to the fact that they have Breece Hall, they have Garrett Wilson, you brought in Allen Lazard, Devontae Adams. What do teammates think at this point, looking at the situation as the team crumbles, and where do they go from here, starting with the head coach?
Listen, I remember I was lucky to be on a lot of winning teams. I won a lot of playoff games, but the couple times that things were kind of shaky, you start realizing, hey, I've got to play for the eye in the sky, because if I'm not here, my resume has to carry on beyond this year. This organization, the foundation is shaky. The guys are walking into the facility. I think there's the meme with Jamal Adams who can't get in. Doors aren't working right. The food doesn't taste as good. It's gray in New Jersey, I imagine, right now. And so, yeah, every day is just a slog. And then when you look at the team meeting, and Coach Ulbrich, God bless him, I think the players like him, but you're like, what is he supposed to do? I don't think he's been given a fair shake. And so everybody comes to work and you're like, well, here we go again. It's just like an episode of The Office, but a lot less funny.
Well, yeah, I think they have close to 30 players on expiring contracts. Like, it's a mess. But the good news is they're not the only ones in that stadium. The Giants are also an absolute mess. Since the infamous Odell Beckham and wide receivers boat photo taken, the two teams with the worst record in the NFL, the Jets, followed by the Giants. We just talked about the Danny Dimes contract. Listen, everyone knows what's going on here, okay? They're not playing him because they don't want to get injured, so they're on the hook for another $20 million. That's why he's the fourth-team quarterback and doing scout safety work this week. He actually made a statement today before practice saying, I know my time with the Giants has been... He knows it's all over. But, Marshall, everybody else in that locker room knows what's going on. The Giants are not trying to win. They're trying to avoid paying this guy, and they're trying to have a better draft pick going forward in 2025. What is the mood like for all those veterans in the Giants locker room who know their lives and futures depend on success?
Well, we're hearing it right now. When your best player, who I believe right now is Dexter Lawrence, comes out and says that he thinks it's bull the way it's being handled, and that he believes in Danny Jones being the best quarterback in that locker room, that can only trickle down. Because Dexter Lawrence is a dude. He is a guy that they also paid. But it's the brazen way that this is happening that is so obviously for money-saving purposes. Okay, because when you show up, and God bless Dane DeVito and his agent, they're milking this for all that they can.
As they should. We know that, as they should.
Right. We're not mad at him for that. But yeah, you can't ask guys to show up and play. Obviously, this is our job, and guys will. But then ultimately, you start losing hope. And if Brian Daboll and Joe Shine want to keep going and build something beyond this, they had a really good draft class. These actions are going to speak loudly to players who are going to remain around. And you might start losing trust, eroding the actual communication levels between coaches and players. It's just all bad right now.
It is. And let's quickly talk about Eli Manning here for a second. He's first ballot Hall of Famer. It's really interesting. He's first potential to be on the ballot for the first time. What other guys are on that list, Marshall Yanda, Luke Kuechly, that stand out to you?
I think to me, I'm a lineman. It's Marshall Yanda, and it's a quiet star. He was one of the most consistent guys at guard for Baltimore. He's an incredible lineman, versatile at times. He played tackle in a pinch and locked people up and just went about his business. I don't think we heard him speak in the years that he played. And so to me, that's the guy that should be a shoe-in. I played with Eli as well. I believe he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's an incredible leader, incredibly consistent quarterback, one of the best guys to have in the locker room. But yeah, he and Marshall Yanda as well. We share a namesake, but he's just one of the best linemen to ever walk the planet, and you just didn't hear much from him. It was incredible.
Same thing with Eli, actually, if you think about it. He was quiet, demeanor. I did the research on this. I found this fascinating. Eli Manning is currently 11th in passing yards in the NFL all time, 11th in passing touchdowns all time, and 11th in completions all time. So give the guy credit. He hit the number. Like he knew exactly what he needed to do. He's been consistent across the board.
Absolutely. And I think his record when he ended in regular season is almost right at the 50-50 mark, which, I don't know if that's the best argument for or against, but consistency, as you're saying. So, yes.
Absolutely. All right, Marshall, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks so much. When we come back on the pregame power-up, we'll end the show how we always do with all the stuff we didn't have time for, which includes some love for the kickers. It's the data dump, and it's next. Pregame Power Up is presented by Campbell's Chunky. soup that eats like a meal.
Welcome back to Pregame PowerUp, presented by Campbell's Chunky.
Frisky feline.
Like a meal. Here we go. Oh, where's
George
the cat?
Pickens.
George
Nick
Pickens.
Chubb would be a very popular tonight. David and
Njoku. Oh, that's a nice price on Njoku. Let's see. Oh, Nick Chubb.
Listen, everybody in Cleveland would sign up for that. Everybody
what a
in
smart
Cleveland
little
would sign up for
cat. All right, let's take a look at what the humans are betting on. The most bet anytime touchdown tonight. Najee Harris at the top around even money. A nice little 2-1. Decent jump to George Pickens, Nick Chubb, which we just mentioned, plus 145. Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. A few options for you there. For more on how people are betting the game, here's DKN social media correspondent Megan Townsley.
Alrighty, Week 12 action kicking off tonight with the Steelers versus the Browns, and I know y'all want to see who our bettors are rolling with, so that's why I'm here to show y'all some of my favorite bets in the DraftKings Sportsbook betting groups. We already have a ton flooding in the groups right now, and I'm gonna be honest, a lot of it is about George Pickens. So let's take it to the Barstool betting group where Megan making money, her favorite bet of the day is over 58.5 receiving yards for Mr. George Pickens. I'm loving it. He's been on fire recently, but then I went over to the DK Network betting group to see other options. Nope, a lot more George Pickens in there as well. Tim Finnegan, he built a same game parlay for tonight's game, starting with George Pickens over 4.5 receptions, Pickens as an anytime touchdown scorer, and then 60 plus receiving yards for the Steelers wideout. 66 people are currently tailing this bet, and if you want to do the same, all you have to do to find these groups is open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click on the social tab at the top, and then you'll find all of the betting groups. I know I may have just glazed Mr. George, but there still are other good bets in these groups as well, and make sure you go check them out before the game kicks off tonight.
Megan, thanks. Okay, time now for everything we couldn't fit into this nice, tight 60-minute show. We call it the data dump. Move over, Justin Tucker. Chris Boswell is now the best in the business. Steelers kicker was named AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for the second time this season. He became the first kicker in NFL history with 3 separate games with 6 or more field goals in his career. By the way, Tucker missed a couple in that season. Boswell leads the NFL with 29 field goals made and 107 points scored in 2024. Steelers have a love-hate relationship with that because they're not scoring enough touchdowns. Boswell's on pace to break the season record of 44 set by San Francisco's David Akers in 2011. DK has a market tonight for Boswell to hit 5 or more field goals, currently at plus 700 club.
And with the weather, that's very possible. Jameis Winston may not be used to this type of weather tonight, as we've mentioned. Temps expected to be in the 30s, some flurries on the way. Winston has started 73 games in his NFL career. He has only started 5 games below 50 degrees with no games at 40 degrees or colder. In Jameis's 4 coldest NFL starts, his teams have scored 12 points, 20, 19, and 10, Trey.
Sort of like the temperature. Then there's Mike Tomlin. He loves to go low. In his career, he's 87, 65, and 1 to the under on a road, a rate of 57%. It's been even better recently. Since 2015, he's 55, 28, and 1 to the under, a rate of 66%.
And here's what else we missed when it comes to trends for this game. The Browns have been frisky in home games at night under Kevin Stefanski. 5-2 straight up and against the spread, including covering in 3 straight. Jameis, however, has been bad in tight games. 19, 31, and 3 against the spread when the spread is 4 points or less, which it is at 3.5. All this to say, he is the least profitable quarterback since 2003. Also, Jameis has covered just 1 of his last 6 starts. So that's not good.
All right, a lot of talk about this Steelers team. Are they really as good as their record? We're the only team in the NFL that has 5 wins over teams currently over 500. Okay, and then we talk about the offense. They didn't score again, touchdown yesterday. They're 8-2, averaging less than 2 touchdowns a game. I find this interesting. The last team to be 8-2 and score or average less than 2 touchdowns scored a game, that would be the 2015 Denver Broncos, where Peyton Manning couldn't do anything, but that defense carried them to, wait for it, Super Bowl 50 and the win over the Carolina Panthers. So we've seen this play out before. We'll see what happens tonight.
Imagine that against all of these explosive offenses in the NFL.
That is Claudia Belafacto. For Claudia, Emerson Lazia, Marshall Newhouse, and everybody associated with the Pregame PowerUp. Enjoy Week 12. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Monday.